Tantor Audio presents Defiance by Shelly Crane. Narrated by Cris Dukehart. Keep listening after Defiance for the bonus Shelly Crane novella, Reverence, narrated by McCarley. One thing was certain in my mind. Change was necessary, and the truth was always the best option. But that didn't mean that it was going to be a painless journey. Maggie. 1.
It's so nice to finally meet you,
she was saying.
Rachel has gone on and on about you for weeks now, over the phone,
she said, her accent endearing and sweet. But even with that, I could barely concentrate on what the woman from the Martinez clan of Prague was saying. I stared Marla down in absolute confusion and disgust as she chatted with someone. Had she said what I thought she said before? It couldn't be. We'd only been at the palace for less than 20 minutes and I already had a new enemy. Though, I guess Marla wasn't new. She'd been working behind the scenes, playing tricks and toying with our minds. Caleb's hand, shaking in mine, brought me back to my reality as the woman waved and said her goodbyes to me. I looked over to calm him, but had to stop my breath from catching out loud. He wasn't shaking with fright or confusion. He was shaking with fury. I followed his gaze to Marcus, who was standing and smirking behind Marla. Caleb's mind ran through the multiple times that Marcus had injured or hurt me, the latest being cutting my hair when I'd fallen asleep at the beach house. His fingers squeezed mine a little too tightly, and I flexed them to get his attention. He jerked his gaze over to me and rubbed my fingers gently in apology before turning back to the raven-haired traitor and her family. Marla laughed as Caleb pulled me behind him as she made her way to us once more. But she was headed to someone behind us.
"Donald,"
she sang, and lifted her hand in greeting.
"You're looking very fit."
"Oh?"
an older man said in surprise and smiled, showing a mouthful of perfectly straight white teeth.
"Why, thank you, Marla dear. It's been too long since you've graced us."
"It really has," she answered. "I'm here to remedy that."
"Well, good. And your champion?"
Marla turned and hid her frown in her hands. She shook her head and lifted her face to him. Her tears might have looked real to him, but we knew otherwise. "He passed on. A terrible accident just yesterday."
"Oh my, that is terrible. Poor Sykes. Could we have been notified, we would have held a memorial for him. But as you know, there are no phones here."
"Yes, well, his wife wouldn't have wanted the attention anyway. She's quiet, and though she did come with us, she's grieving in her own way." The councilman nodded as if he knew exactly what she meant. Then he said,
"I see. It's hard, I know."
"As a matter of fact, I'd better go check on her now." Marla spouted and waved to him as her entourage followed her quickly out some double doors that led into a large hallway. "It was so good to see you," she called over her shoulder.
"You too, dear."
Then he turned to us, and he saw me for the first time. Correction, he saw the visionary. He gasped and fell to one knee in front of me. He took my hand, kissing the backs of my fingers and pressing them to his head before looking back up to me. His eyes took a long time before they left the mark on my neck. I tried to be still and portray the object on display that he apparently thought I was. Finally he spoke.
"Oh, visionary, we are so glad you've come. We've waited long and hard years for your return."
I swallowed my sarcastic response. Waited long and hard years for my return? None of that seemed right. For one, they didn't seem to be waiting, and for two, they sure weren't in hard times. I looked him over. He was wearing what had to be an expensive suit. His shoes were shinier than the marble floor we were standing on, and his eyebrows were perfectly aligned and trimmed. He looked severely pampered. And as for the third thing, the thing about my return, what did that mean? Did he think I was reincarnated or something? "It's nice to meet you," I said lamely.
"Donald, this is Maggie Masters, soon to be Maggie Jacobson."
Caleb explained. He looked over at me and smiled.
"My significant."
I had my mind closed off like Caleb had told me to. He had said with all the worshipping going on that my mind would overload for sure in this place. I tried to open up a little to hear the councilman's thoughts. All I heard and felt was disgust. It wafted over me, almost like when Marcus's mind was open to me. Like slime. I figured I must not be focusing on the councilman right, so I backed away from his mind and settled back on Caleb.
"Maggie."
Donald tested my name on his tongue. He didn't sound as though he was impressed.
"Is that short for something? Margaret, maybe."
I almost sighed. Almost. "No, sir. Just Maggie."
And Peter?"
he said clearly, but with a little inflection. He peered around Caleb, and I did too. Peter was standing there with a smile pasted on his handsome face. A big, fake smile, with tight, crinkled eyes. The councilman and Peter stared at each other.
"Donald,"
Peter said. He folded his arms over his chest, the material bunching and twisting with the tightness, his head turning ever so slightly to the right.
"How nice to see you, as always." "I'm sure,"
Donald rebutted with equal amounts of sarcasm. I felt seriously uncomfortable and fidgeted with Caleb's sleeve.
"Why don't we get started on the introductions? The visionary needs to get to know her people."
My heart jumped in my throat. "What?" I squeaked, and Caleb eased his arm around my waist.
"It's okay,"
he whispered.
"He just means that he'll announce you to everyone." "Yes, dear, unless you'd like to say a few words."
Donald hedged. No, that won't be necessary," I answered quickly and tried not to gulp.
"As for the rest of you,"
Donald addressed the rest of our family who stood behind us.
"It's so good to see you all again. Please, come in."
He lifted an eyebrow and pursed his lips in disapproval.
"You don't have to just stand in the doorway like that."
"Donald," Gran drawled and came around Caleb and I. "Don't throw out your condescension on us now. We're all standing in the doorway because you're blocking our way, you old star-struck fool."
"Oh,"
Donald said abruptly and looked around.
"Quite right. Forgive me, visionary, you must think me terribly improper."
No, no," I mumbled. He waved his arm for us to enter the grand room. I felt someone at my back and turned to find Kyle. His hand was on my shoulder and a sympathetic look on his face. Beside him was Lynn, with a tight grip on his hand as she looked around at the golden room.
"Time to face the music,"
Kyle whispered, and then patted Caleb on the back. "You both act like we're going to war or something," Lynn muttered. Caleb laughed.
"No, we just know that Maggie is absolutely going to hate this."
"Hate what?" I asked.
"This,"
he said and pointed. I looked up to see a room full of people who were just a few seconds ago bustling and talking. Now, in the eerie quiet of the room, I could see them all falling to one knee and bowing their heads to me. It was a struggle to keep the disgusted grimace from my face. Everyone just waited. It dawned that they were waiting for me. Crap. "Thank you. You can stand," I said. A few of them came forward to me, and each in turn did their little reverence bow, kissing fingers, bowing head, and touching it to my hand. When they finally rose, I smiled and tried not to cringe into Caleb's side. Everyone else stood and watched. A few well-dressed individuals made their way to a platform that had a long table, covered in white linen. The 7 of them sat, and then looked our way. At first, I thought they were looking at me, but Gran squeezed my shoulder as she went by. She made her way and stood at the end of the table. They all sat down together, making a total of 8 apparently important people. I was confused. Caleb leaned in and spoke low.
"The council, or the assembly, as they like to call themselves. There's a member from each family. Gran represents us."
"Why not your dad?" He's the champion.
It can't be the champion. The champion must always be free for our family, and not tied down to any other position. Technically, Gran, since she is an assembly member, should live here at the palace with the rest of them, but she refuses.
Did they pick her? I asked, thinking the assembly probably wouldn't want such a vocal and, speak her mind type on the council.
Nope. Each family chooses their own representative.
He grinned.
Who else could we vote in but Gran?
I giggled, causing a few people to turn and stare. Caleb just ignored them and put an arm around my shoulder, but I couldn't help but wonder what the strange look on their faces was for. I opened my mind, focusing on one guy in particular, who looked pretty upset. His gaze latched onto mine, and I immediately felt his jealousy. He wasn't angry. He just wanted. He wanted what he'd been told his whole life was his only way to have a family, and to love someone. His mind swamped mine with thoughts of imprints coming back, the possibility of his soulmate being in this very room, that I was the catalyst, the thing that would bring it all back to them. I smiled at him, and he seemed shocked by the gesture. He smiled back and bowed his head.
That's Paul, of the Patrona clan,
Caleb said quietly.
And beside him is Felipe. Do you remember me telling you about him?
Yes, the other human besides Gran and me. Felipe looked over and saw us looking. He waved to Caleb and bowed his head to me. He started to come our way, but a child grabbed his pant leg and made him stop. He laughed and picked the girl up. Everyone stared at Kyle and Lynn as well, the looks on their faces with just as much longing. Kyle was oblivious, but Lynn knew what was at stake. She cringed into Kyle's side in an uncharacteristic move from the spunky girl I knew. Jen was pulled by Maria to stand next to us. Maria took Caleb's and my arm and yawned as she leaned her head against him. He chuckled at her. I looked around the room then, as Donald started addressing everyone loudly, but I tuned him out. Everyone's mind was the same, and they all seemed as taken with me as Donald had been. They wanted what they thought I had to offer, their lives back. Little did they know that I had no idea what the heck I was doing. I really hoped that I could help them because desperation seemed to be the mood of the day.
Maggie,
I heard, and looked back up to see Donald watching me curiously. Yes?
I wondered if you'd like to say a few words to your people.
I looked at him and realized that though he asked me earlier if I wanted to speak, and I told him that I did not, that he wasn't really giving me the option, he was just being polite. Caleb sighed beside me, and I glanced at him to see that he understood all too well that the assembly had no intentions of letting me sit quietly. I steeled myself. I had Caleb's hand in mine, his blood and love running through my veins, and his heart in my chest. I could do this.
You bet your pretty tush you can.
I tried not to giggle at his words in my head. I squeezed his hand and turned to face the whole room, a bouquet of different people and colors. I didn't wait. I just went for it. I just wanted to say that it's really good to meet you all. I hope we can get to know each other well this week. And since I was in a position for everyone to hear me at once, and please, you don't have to bow to me. I'm just like you. I know that you are anxious about my being here and what that could mean, but we'll figure it all out together. I realize the importance of this, and I promise you that I am taking this seriously. But my name is Maggie. Please call me that. Then I smiled. I looked around the room. Some were smiling back, some were just watching, and some were in absolute shock, but they weren't looking at me. I followed their glances over my shoulder to find a red-faced Donald.
Visionary,
he said clearly, and I got his meaning by it. No one was to call me Maggie.
I know that you are young, but you have an obligation to our people, being what you are. You can't allow them to treat you as some commoner because you are not.
And you are not some measly human anymore either."
He sneered, loud and clear. "I understand," I told him. "I'm not shirking my duties. But I am the visionary, and I don't feel the necessity to treat me as something else other than just one of you. I plan to try to figure out what it is I'm supposed to do while I'm here."
"Forgive me, visionary, but we know exactly what you are supposed to do."
He came around the table and stood in front of us all.
"Welcome home,"
he boomed, the echo eerie in the big room.
"You are to come here for good, rule our people, and live with the council as has been planned for centuries."
What was I supposed to say to that? Peter touched my arm. He gave me a look. I focused on him, assuming he had something to say.
"I assumed they were going to try to do this, Maggie. As much as I love my people, they can be adamant and downright obsessive about tradition and formality. Just don't get worked up. We'll figure all this out together. I won't let them bully you, I promise."
I nodded as Peter turned to Donald and smiled that same smile as before, the one that said, "You are seriously full of crap."
"Donald, Maggie is only 17 years old, and was a human. She has human ties, a father and brother, friends. You cannot expect her to uproot herself completely and come to live here, not to mention Caleb." "What about Caleb?"
Donald said smugly.
"I extended no such invitation to Caleb to live with us." "He is her significant,"
Peter replied tightly.
"And if she chooses to keep him here, he may stay. But that is to the visionary's discretion how she handles that situation."
My brows bunched in confusion, but he went on.
"I understand that she needs his touch to survive, but the visionary is too important and refined to be consumed with petty puppy love and insignificant use of her time."
Caleb rumbled beside me, and I gripped his arm out of instinct. What was the council trying to pull?
"Therefore, if the visionary so wishes it, she may keep Caleb here in the common quarters, as it wouldn't be proper for him to stay with her in her portion of the palace." "Like hell,"
Caleb growled. 2.
"Donald!"
Peter roared.
"I beg your pardon, but are you suggesting that Maggie keep my son here as some sort of
consort?" I finished for him. Just the thought of them suggesting that I use Caleb for such a thing was enough to make my blood boil. And boil it did. The lights began to flicker a little above us. Everyone looked around in confusion, but I never removed my eyes from the individuals at the table. I looked at them each in turn, and told them with my gaze that this was idiocy. They all looked away, as if scared of me, or ashamed for sitting by quietly while Donald lorded over everyone. So, if they were scared of me, then why were they pulling this crap? Except Gran, of course. She just smiled and watched. Donald bristled at my tone and cleared his throat as he took a slight step back. Then he swatted at an energy ribbon as it floated in the air near his head. His eyes bulged when it went straight through his skin. I looked behind me to see that there were lots of energy ribbons in the air. I took a deep breath, understanding the blue menace was coming directly from me. Caleb tried to touch my skin, his hands running up my arms to my face. But in honesty, he was so upset himself that he wasn't calming me much.
"What's going on here?"
Another assembly member shouted.
"Who's doing this?"
"I am," I answered in a hushed voice, and everyone stopped. Caleb slid his hands from my face slowly and turned to glare at the assembly once more.
"It's not her fault. Maggie does this when she's upset, so stop it,"
he ground out.
"It was not our intention to upset you, my dear visionary,"
Donald said, and made his way back to the table to his chair. I was glad I wasn't close enough to get a good look at the condescension on his face that I could hear in his voice.
"What part was it that—"
He stopped. I followed his gaze to my wrist. Crap. He turned a couple more shades of red. He glared at Peter, then Caleb. I watched as his brow shot up in accusation. Or maybe it was curiosity.
"So, you've mutualized with our visionary?"
he asked, causing Caleb's grip to tighten on me.
"You tainted our visionary before you were married?" "Now, hold on a second," Peter interrupted. "There's no law. It's a matter of propriety,"
he bellowed, and stood banging a wrinkled fist on the table. Jen pulled Maria back to her and looked like she wanted to cover her poor daughter's ears.
"Something you should have taught her as the champion of your clan."
"Well, he's been a little bit busy saving our lives," I muttered from behind Caleb.
"What was that, visionary?"
I straightened my back and stood closer to Caleb. I grabbed his hand, letting our wrist tattoos show off our love for each other, but also the fact that we mutualized. It was not something dirty, and the fact that he was trying to take my perfect, happy, delicious memory of that night away from me wasn't going to fly. Caleb grinned as he heard my inner rant, and chuckled as I turned to the table before me. I spoke clear and loud. I said, "We've been a little busy trying to stay alive. The fact that I did or didn't mutualize with my significant shouldn't matter to you. The fact that we were almost killed by members of the Virtuoso who are in this very room, and you're doing nothing about it, is what we should discuss. And it's Maggie, not visionary, sir."
"What is this trickery?"
another assemblyman asked.
"Are you saying that someone in this room tried to kill you? How? When?"
"Not just me, but yes, on more than one occasion."
"Who?"
he repeated louder. "Maggie's pregnant," Marla blurted out. I gasped and started to yell back, but everyone in the room, especially the council members, stopped and stared at me. Or wait, no. They were glaring at Caleb. Crap. Things were about to get ugly.
"That is not true,"
Caleb shouted.
"Marla's trying to deflect. The Watsons kidnapped Maggie and kept her away from me for days. Then just a couple of days ago, they sent someone to my house, and they tried to kill us there, too. Now how can we believe you?"
Donald chimed.
"The proof that you mutualized with her before you were married is right there for all to see. If you would mutualize with her before marriage, then why not do more than that, You can believe me because I'm telling you. We've done nothing more than mutualize."
"And I say so too," I butted in to defend Caleb. "I'm not pregnant, and haven't done anything to make it so that I was."
"Trust has to be earned,"
Donald said.
"And I'm sorry to say it, but we don't know you well enough to trust you like that. Marla has been one of us since birth."
A big, burly older man stood up from the council table and said in a flabbergasted voice,
"But she's the visionary."
"Assembly, I'm sorry to be the stickler here," Marla continued in a voice that strained with its fake sincerity.
"But it would be so easy for them to say that she's not pregnant, without any proof. She doesn't want Caleb to be punished."
"Punished?" I yelled, and looked at Caleb. "What is she talking about?" I hissed. He leaned close.
"I told you that our kind waits until we're married."
"But you didn't say you'd be punished otherwise."
"Is that a problem, visionary? I thought you said there was no indiscretion performed."
Donald piped in. Indiscretion? This whole day was going so far from the way that I imagined it. Before I could speak again, Peter did.
"I informed the council of the Watsons' ploys and plans to hurt my family before we arrived. Are you saying that you have no knowledge of it? We received your message, but this is a classic case of he said, she said. You wouldn't be bending rules to cover for your family now, would you, Donald?" "How dare you accuse me of such a thing?" Donald roared. "I am counselor and mentor to all, not just my family, as are we all on the council." "Then, if you investigate the preposterous idea that Maggie could be pregnant after only being my son's significant for a couple of weeks, then you'll investigate the Watsons and what they did to my family," Peter demanded in a gravelly voice. "I think you best watch," Donald started.
But Gran cut him off.
Of course we'll investigate the Watsons, Donald. If such a claim was made against the Jacobsons, we'd investigate that as well, which is precisely why we have to have a hearing for Maggie and Caleb.
Everyone gasped, including me. What was Gran doing?
When a life is taken, there must be a hearing to determine if punishment is required. 2 Watsons were killed at the home of Peter by Maggie and Caleb, and another was killed at the home of Max by another member of the Watson clan. You know the rules, Winifred,
another member said.
The murder of a member of the same clan is dealt with within the clan. That has nothing to do with us. So let's get on with the dealing for Maggie and Caleb,
she said, and looked at us.
Who in the family will account for them?
I will,
Peter said, and began to recount everything that happened to us at his house and at Kyle's. While he was doing that, I turned to Caleb and spoke low with Kyle and Lynn huddled in as well. What is Gran doing? I asked. Why would she want them to?
She's not,
Caleb assured. He touched my cheek and gave me a sympathetic look. His hand coasted down to wrap around my wrist, his thumb rubbing my tattoo in possession. I shivered even in the tense circumstances. The side of Caleb's mouth tipped up at my reaction, but Kyle smacked his arm.
What?
Dude, Kyle complained and rolled his eyes. He looked back at me.
Gran's diffusing. If she brings it up first instead of letting the Watsons tell their side, it'll look better for us. Make us look innocent.
We are innocent, I insisted in a hiss. They tried to.
I know,
he said quickly.
But they don't know that.
Okay. I nodded, to make myself believe everything was going to be all right. This was so not how Caleb described the reunification to me. Caleb and Kyle both made it seem like a big party, like it was going to be fun, hanging out, dancing, and talking. This was just not.
I'm sorry. If we had just imprinted and you'd just been you, it wouldn't have been this way. But because you're the visionary, I kind of expected some of this. Usually the council just sits up there the whole week and we barely see them. But because of what you are, they feel like they've got to make a scene or something. Why do I feel like I should apologize?
He smiled and pulled me to him, tucking my face into his neck.
Oh, baby,
he whispered.
You didn't mess anything up. They're just all a bunch of coots is all.
I like that, I told him quietly. Coots. Then we were jolted as a loud bang was issued. Donald was banging his fist on the clothed table again, face to face with Peter as he leaned toward him.
I've accounted for the details of what happened. My kids were just protecting themselves, and you can find no fault in that. Don't judge and jury me, Peter. This is not some human courtroom where you can play lawyer and weasel your way out of the rules and traditions that were set forth for us centuries ago. That's not what we're trying to do. The visionary and my son were not only justified in their actions, but would be dead, and many of us dead as well, if they hadn't done what they did. Irrelevant, and you know it.
Enough! Gran yelled, and swiped at her hair that had fallen from her bun. Good grief, you know the rules yourself, Donald Watson. Watson. It all made sense now. Gran continued. A hearing will be set, as is customary, and we'll vote, nothing else to do about it. Now, both of you stop causing a scene and let everyone meet their visionary.
Quite right,
Donald agreed.
And a pregnancy test will be issued to Maggie to determine that she is not with child.
Pardon, Donald, Marla called, but she wouldn't be far enough along to be detected on a home pregnancy test. She'll need a blood test. As soon as the words left her mouth, I knew exactly what she was planning, though her thoughts were not open to me. Next, she would suggest that her aunt take my blood. It just so happens that my Aunt Ruth, Saxe's widow, has the ability to perform the blood draw without any pain or discomfort to the visionary. Peter interjected.
This is ridiculous and disrespectful, to perform a test solely with the purpose of trying to catch the visionary in a lie. If she's not lying, there should be no reason she would refuse the test.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?